afternoon and good evening, as we have many participants from all around the world. First of all, I would like to thank the initiative and also the invitation to share this session on behalf of CUT Brazil. This session, we will talk about organizing migrant workers, trade union initiatives, and challenges. Before giving the floor to our special guests, I could not start this session without calling attention to what is happening in Myanmar right now, and to what is also happening in Haiti. And of course, the challenges that all workers are facing with the COVID crisis, and also to denounce the criminal response of the Brazilian government in helping actually to spread the virus in our country. So organizing is a main challenge for trade unions and migrants. And as well said yesterday, migrants are one of the groups more vulnerable. So all initiatives that gives voice to those that are excluded, including migrants, are most welcome. I would also like to share an important information regarding the Global Labor Column. It published an article by Michael Ford, who joined our seminar, our webinar yesterday. And the article is based on her talk yesterday. Other articles on migration will be also published there. So I would like to then present our finalists, our guests. Let me get just the information here. So we have the pleasure to have with us Zoubeida Nakib. She is a trade unionist from Tunisia. She's a member of the Teachers Federation of UGTT and works for the Union Department of International Relations and Migration. Her topic will be to talk with us on protecting migrant workers in Tunisia, trade union-led approach. We will also have, together with us, comrades Herbert Beck from Verdi, and Jillian Roque from PS Link. Herbert Beck, he was Vice Chair, Executive and Legislative Board of Verdi, and also he's member of the Public Service International Executive Board, bringing his expertise in healthcare, decent work, union rights, and occupational health and safety. Jillian Roque is currently Chief of the Staff of the Public Service Labor Independent Confederation, PS Link, which is a national confederation of government workers and their unions. And she has also over 15 years of experience in leading various projects and campaigns. They will talk about organizing workers labor agreement on nurses. And our last speaker, Comrade Ambet Yuson, he was elected and he is the current General Secretary of the Building and Wood Workers. He started his work with the International Federation of Building and Wood Workers as a national project coordinator in the Philippines. And he will talk about organizing migrant construction workers in Qatar. Before I give the floor to Zoubeida, I would like to remind you that this session is being recorded. All questions should be asked through the chat. And we also have the whiteboard where you can capture ideas, questions, and share resources, papers, videos, struggle songs, and even revolutionary recipes. So presenters will have 15 minutes each, and I'll have the pleasure to give the floor initially to our comrades, please.
Donc, ma présentation.
So my presentation will be about protecting migrant workers in Tunisia, a labor union approach led by UGTT, which is the Tunisian labor unions.
Introduction historique.
So quick history. At the end of the 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, Tunisia has seen a number of migrations towards its territories for multiple reasons, but essentially for labor reasons. French people, Italians, people from Malta, but
malteses, pero también tribos
libanesas que se instalaram nas nossas terras.
Étaient actifs essentiellement dans les ports, les mines, l'agriculture et les chemins de fer.
And it's in these sectors that labor union work has started in Tunisia. So after the independence of Tunisia, the European communities left the territory. Then the Libyan communities followed after the stabilization of the situation in their country, particularly after the discovery of oil in Libya. The Algerian community has also progressively the country after the independence of Algeria in 1963. So the context. For decades, the General Tunisian Workers' Union, UGTT, which is a free and independent labor union created in 1946, has protected and assisted all Tunisian workers outside of the country, particularly in Europe, in collaboration with the European labor unions, and this up until the start of the Tunisian revolution and in Libya, and the arrival of the war in Libya and the arrival of the migrants fleeing the war. This situation was meant to be provisional and became more and more established. And today, Tunisia is not a transit country towards Europe anymore, but now a host country. The number of migrant sub-Saharan workers, essentially sub-Saharan in our country, goes beyond 53,000 workers. Most of these are irregular, non-documented migrants. This situation of vulnerability has created lots of violations of all types: low wages, non-payment, abusive layoffs, excessive working hours, no holidays, no holiday pay, no overtime pay, very bad working conditions, forced labor, and even cases of slavery. So the creation of the UGTT migration network. The UGTT, sticking to its principle of defending the rights of workers without any discrimination, has started from the start to protect these workers who, whatever their situation, be they documented or non-documented. It's within this framework that the networks of migration focal points of UGTT was created. It is the result of a collaboration between UGT and ILO within the FAIR project. The UGT has commanded to engage to defend Objective 3 of the FAIR project. In the Objective 3 is for more efficient protection of migrant workers in Tunisia. So the training of the migration focal points of UGTT, the network has started a training program and that has allowed its members to acquire practical knowledge for a better protection of the rights of migrant workers. The meetings and the training workshops were focused on migration governance, fair hiring, and Tunisian legislation, and the conditions for migrant workers in Tunisia. So there was also an exchange of best practices with the CGT, the French CGT, the French Labor Union CGT, on the topic welcoming migrants and communication links. This field visit has allowed the members of the teams to acquire a clear idea of the management of a space for migrants in terms of organization, welcoming, and services. It also allowed them to read publications destined to migrant workers, like flyers and leaflets, what these leaflets should contain to be useful for those for the migrant workers. The story of the organization defending migrant workers to fighting for their right to a fair treatment and their full integration in the French society and members of their family gives a good idea of what we could offer migrant workers in Tunisia and the role that could be played as a focal point networks or as a labor union organization. The services offered to migrants in our spaces, welcoming, we give them information on the legislation, on defining work relations between workers and employers, facilitate access to basic services, inform, train, and protect against violations like exploitation, forced labor, or even human trafficking. Facilitate the integration in useful information, specific trainings like financial management, play a role of mediator in case of work-related conflicts. These services are mainly provided through a consulting spaces for migrant workers in these spaces. Relations between the different stakeholders. Right after the revolution and the apparition of the migration networks and flows, many associations like Tunisian Association or Migrant Association, international organizations in Tunisia, like the International Organization for Migrations, the National Agency fighting against human trafficking that was created in Tunisia in 2016. All these people came to help the migrant workers. And after a while, the different roles have been dispatched among the different. At the beginning, everyone was doing everything: humanitarian aid, legal aid, care, work conflicts, mediation, and everyone, even UTGT. So everyone was basically offering these services everywhere and in any way. After a couple of years, the problems appeared. Who does what? This situation has created lots of tension and conflicts. Then the pandemic of COVID-19, it's a problem, and we try to find solutions. So this situation has continued up until the arrival of the COVID-19. So the pandemic in Tunisia, like in every other country in the world, as a focal point, migration focal point network, we have contacted the migrant workers, particularly domestic workers, female domestic workers, to inquire on the impact of these changes, sanitary, economic, and social changes linked to the pandemic. As we could have foreseen, the workers have been in a very difficult situation because of the pandemic, of the lockdowns. They had to stay at home. They could not be able to go to work, and of course did not get any revenue, knowing that very often they are just above the poverty level. They get their day workers, so no money saved in order to be able to face this unemployed period. The working in the field to distribute help and help people in difficult situations has allowed to implement a efficient way of working between our social network and the different stakeholders. This collective action has helped us to implement a form of agreement on the way we would be collaborating and help each other in order to better fulfill our job. From now on, we work synergistically, we work complementarily, and we are more efficient than before. So what are the way forward? The UGTT has carried a awareness-raising campaign and a mobilizing campaign, organizing campaign that has touched about 5,000 migrant workers. The model that was chosen by our labor union is to affiliate the migrant workers in their respective industrial sectors, just like the other Tunisian workers, without any discrimination. This model is the result of a long approach within our organization, because the social inclusion of the migrants and their families means, firstly, that the worker needs to be integrated on its workspace and within its industry. This campaign, in cooperation with a certain number of migrant associations, has allowed us to establish a very important database that has allowed us to better understand this population. The statistics and the data are an absolutely indispensable tool to advocate for these workers within the decision-making authorities in order to legalize the situation of the workers, migrant workers in our countries, to improve the national migration strategy that has been under discussion since 2014 to ratify the conventions 97 and 143 of the ILO and revision of the Tunisian Working Code. Thank you for your attention.
We have already some questions, but we will leave them to when the others panelists also share their contribution. Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting. Now I would like to invite comrades Herbert and Jillian to share their presentation with us on organizing workers within the Germany-Philippines bilateral labor agreement on nurses. The floor is yours. Thank you.
We are talking about the bilateral labor agreement between the Republic of the Philippines and the Federal Republic of Germany concerning the placement. Here it is. Thank you. Concerning the placement of Filipino health professionals. Before I pass on to my colleague Jillian, first a brief comment on the German perspective, why it came to this bilateral agreement. Dramatically, shortage was the reason of healthcare workers in Germany, where they made a survey about 7 years ago. And we discovered that there are 170,000 healthcare workers missing, 70,000 in hospitals. That was the reason from the German side. So I pass on to Jillian to go on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I clear? Okay. So the Philippines is widely known as one of the major countries of origin for migrant workers. And on average, around 6,000 workers leave every day to work overseas. These are pre-pandemic numbers. And most of those who migrate are in domestic work, construction work, service work, health and social care sectors. And many of our health workers are forced to leave out of desperation to escape poverty. They leave because of low pay, poor working conditions in the hospitals, lack of decent jobs in the health sector. And basically, they want to provide a better life for their families. Majority of labor migration from the Philippines go through private recruitment agencies. And during the past 2 decades, the Philippine government has also increasingly used bilateral labor agreements as a tool to govern labor flows to other countries. And bilateral labor agreements are seen as tools that can increase the protection of the rights and welfare of Filipino migrant workers. And because of the importance of BLAs in the country's labor migration governance, trade unions, including PS-Link, has actively engaged in advocacy around bilateral labor agreements. And thus far, based on our experience, the most promising practice on BLAs would be this one between the Philippines and Germany on the migration of Filipino health workers to Germany. So first slide, next slide please, yes. So this bilateral labor agreement features a government-to-government hiring arrangement facilitating the recruitment and placement of Filipino nurses in German health facilities. The main parties to the agreement are the POEA, the Federal Employment Agency, the International Placement Services, and the Agency for International Cooperation. Next slide, please. What sets this BLA apart from the rest of the BLA signed by the Philippines, and actually among other BLAs that have been signed by other countries, is its holistic and rights-based approach. It is based on human and labor rights norms, based on ILO standards. It is based on fair recruitment principles. And it also complies with the World Health Organization Code of Practice on the international recruitment of health professionals. Next slide, please. So the this BLA ensures equality of treatment in terms of wages, working conditions. It ensures the occupational safety and health of the migrant workers. It has a non-discrimination clause. It provides for social protection and security. And so after the signing of this bilateral labor agreement, Germany and the Philippines also entered into a bilateral social security agreement to ensure portability of social security benefits for migrant workers. And this BLA also ensures access to justice, settlement of disputes, and the right to join trade unions. And most of all, it also applies social dialogue, as it involves the different social partners in the Joint Oversight Committee that was set up under this bilateral labor agreement, which my colleague will elaborate later on. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This bilateral labor agreement also recognizes the importance of ensuring transparency in the recruitment process. Workers have access to comprehensive information before they leave. And on the part of PS-Link, as a member of Public Services International, we have also developed migration information kits covering the different stages of migration, from predecision meaning even before they decide to migrate to apply for a job abroad, predecision, pre-departure, on-site, and return and reintegration. So for us, it is very important. Migrant workers have unique information needs at different stages of migration. So, and then under this bilateral labor agreement also, workers also have are provided comprehensive language training, and also a pre-departure orientation training to prepare them before they leave the Philippines. And also, migrant workers also get support, for reintegration in their workplace and in their communities, which my colleague Herbert will also elaborate.
It's my turn now. Okay, I will proceed. That's the post-arrival phase now, and the employer has paid already the airfare, has provided accommodation and an additional language course if needed, because for the work in the hospital or in the elderly care home, the migrant worker needs to have at least B1, and some are demanding for B2 level. That's the European language standard level. So mostly the migrant worker has to undergo this course, which is paid by the employer. And the employer has to provide an employment contract based on a collective agreement, which means it's collectively agreed wage, working conditions, etc. And the reference collective agreement is, or the standard agreement is orientated on the nationwide collective agreement for public services. Next slide, please. This means that it's the employer's obligations to provide the same salary, benefits, working conditions, social protections comparable to a national worker. He has to support for the migrant worker in the professional recognition process and in preparing for the examination. Besides, the migrant worker is supported by the GIZ, because the GIZ cares and supports the migrant worker as a representative of the respective company. And so you have to have a concept of integration at the workplace and outside the workplace, which means it's adapted to the single hospital or elderly care home, and it's lasting at least 3 or 4 months, because you have to prepare for the exam, for the recognition of your profession, and this must be passed at least 1 year after you take the work in the hospital. So next slide, please. It's the worker's obligation and rights again that to prepare for the language and professional recognition exam. Having passed this, you are grouped in collective agreement as a registered nurse, and you are upgraded, if you want to say like that. And after passing the exam, the migrant worker can decide on the duration of the employment. He can decide or have the possibility of bringing one's family reunification. And as already Jill said, there's portability of social insurance contributions. Next slide, please. So what happens with the unions in Germany? The German employee representations, which is normally a works council inside the company, inside the hospital. This is monitoring the compliance with collective and company agreements and legal requirements. The Works Council provides individual information and advices for the migrant worker, and generally said it's no difference between a migrant worker or a worker. A worker is a worker in sense of the collective agreement, the German collective agreement, so we don't make any distinction. So everything is equal. And supporting and representing the migrant worker to the employer, that's another duty the Works Council has. Next slide, please. The Joint Monitoring Committee, already mentioned, is consisting of representatives of parties, the mentioned parties, and PSI members, PS Link and Verdi. And this Joint Monitoring Committee shall adapt implementing guidelines, which is done already, monitor, evaluate, and assess the implementation. That's already done as well, and recommend proposals to amend agreements, which is ongoing, and conduct periodic meetings, which have been twice a year. During the pandemic now, it's only one time. So next slide, please. I pass on to Jill.
You have two minutes more, okay? Thank you.
So this bilateral labor agreement is also called triple win, because in a sense the agreement does not just benefit the country of origin or just the country of destination or the migrant worker, but it benefits all three. Workers' rights are protected. Filipino nurses have access to both PS Link and Verdi in terms of information, organizing, and representation. PS Link and Verdi are able to review job descriptions, monitor the deployment and recruitment conditions of health workers within the bilateral labor agreement, and the unions participate in the periodic meetings. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please.
Okay, it's my turn. The BLA could serve well as a model for other countries. And the other thing is what already have been mentioned. It is pioneering in the recognition and participation of trade unions, which is our demand and which was fulfilled. Next slide, please. Jill. Jill? Okay. Jill?
Yes, prospective migrant workers receives pre-employment, pre-departure orientation support provided by PS League and other PSI health unions. Each migrant worker in Germany is free to join Verdi.
Next slide, please. That's our final slide. Unity makes us strong. You see the picture ahead and our picture of Verdi. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Herbert and Jillian, for the great presentation. Very interesting. Also the Joint Monitoring Committee and the concept of triple win. Anyway, we will have more time soon to go further on. Now I have the pleasure to invite Comrade Ambet Yuson, and he will share with us and talk with us about organizing migrant construction workers in Qatar. Please, Comrade Ambet, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good day to everyone. Thank you, Claire. It's really great that, I haven't started that. I already received some questions. I know this is quite a controversial topic, no? Qatar has the highest per capita income in the world in terms of population. There are nearly a little bit more than 2 million in population, but 80% are migrant workers, and close to 1 million are construction workers from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, the Philippines, and now there are more coming from Africa as well. And Qatar is the host of the 2022 World Cup. What I'm going to share with you is how can we organize migrant workers in the country where trade unions are not allowed. It's not allowed, but BWI Global Union is allowed. We are allowed there to work in partnership with the Qatari authorities. I'll show you here why it's not. Sorry. Okay. Here, in 2013, you can see there we are protesting. Actually, it's in front of the Supreme Committee in charge of the World Cup in 2013. But in 2016, we signed a global agreement with the Supreme Committee in charge of the World Cup. You can see here, Global Union to jointly inspect the World Cup sites. That's 2016. In 2017, we also signed an agreement with a French multinational company who have, at the time, more than 10 construction projects. No? And then in 2018, you are aware that ILO already started to have an office in Qatar. And as a result, together with ILO and the other global unions working together with the Qatari authorities, there was a significant labor reforms that includes the abolition of kafala system, that includes the creation of the dispute settlement mechanism, and then you also have the non-discriminatory wage, minimum wage, and then you have health and safety and other reforms. So those are really important developments as of now. But of course, the challenge remains is how to implement this, because reforms are not meaningful if it is not felt on the ground by every migrant workers. So this is a challenge, and in Qatar, unions are not allowed. So how are you going to organize the migrant workers? So you can see here in the photo, you will see several seminars. We call this a post-arrival orientation seminar. We run thousands of these seminars, together with the Philippine Embassy and the community organization. If I'll move further, we have brought these seminars from PAOS. We make it a membership orientation seminar. So instead of running it in the city, we went to the labor camps, to the labor accommodation, and we have migrant workers, construction workers joining the community organization. And then if I have to put it a bit, they are becoming more creative. Now they are running awareness building activities using the Facebook. And you will see here, it's not only Filipino communities, you have the Nigerian, you have the Ghanaian, the Indian, in coordination with the ministry, educating them about the new labor laws. So more and more that workers are aware of their rights. I think this is a very important component of the work we do. And then if you move here, we also do community-based organizing. The natural grouping of workers are along the nationalities, normally organized for social activities, providing support for issues facing the migrants. You can see here, sports fest, music festivals, and it is mobilizing hundreds and thousands of migrants. This is a very good entry point for organizing. So here, part of the community organizing during the COVID pandemic, you have seen migrant workers helping fellow migrant workers, mobilizing, providing humanitarian support to their fellow citizens. So that is a very important. These important elements of organizing and mobilizing solidarity among migrants. Because of this, we were able to build community organizations who are actively involved in addressing labor issues. So we are moving from a social activity to a more concrete labor issues. Now we have the BMKQ, the Filipino Construction Workers Group. We have GFONT, the Nepali organization. We have the Indian Benevolent Organization. We have the Ghanaian group. We have domestic workers and many others. So we were able to build community organization, but not only for social activities. We were able to transform it to address issues of workers on the work site. Okay, as we go along with our community organization, another component that we were able to run is the leadership and capacity building training. This is important to do the work in Qatar. We were able to train safety representatives. If we are promoting safety of workers, we need to train safety representative. We're able to train workers representative in the workers committee, and quite interesting, we trained thousands of paralegals. We call it paralegals. These are barefoot lawyers. They are not actual lawyers, but they know about the Qatar labor laws, and they are really very useful in providing legal advice to their fellow citizens. The fourth element that we are working on is the organizing workers' committees. So unions are not allowed, but we have workers' welfare committees. And these welfare workers' committees are the representative of the workers, and they're able to negotiate with the authorities. We have built in all stadium, we have built over 30 safety committees. And then also in QDVC and Vancy, the French company, we have built 25 member workers committee representing 25,000 workers at the time. You can see in the photo, they are electing, they are counting themselves, and they are hugging each other because they won. What is important here, it's not just about the committee. What's important here is that workers are able to elect their representatives. And the one running the election are the workers themselves. Here, we were also able to educate the workers. Why are you voting? What is this? Who are you voting? And excitingly, we have campaigns. People are allowed to campaign, allowed to go around, talk to the workers, and express their own platform. Here, it's a workers' committee. That's a limitation we have. But I can tell you, from workers' committee, they were negotiating issues about food, issues about breaks. But some workers' committees are advanced. They're negotiating more vacation leave. They're negotiating wages. So it's really transforming to a kind of a trade union. We also run trainings. You can see we run trainings of workers' representative, and BWI is allowed to do that inside the site. We have access to the site, and we are the one providing the training for the workers' representative. And you can see here in the photo, they have certificates. It's, certificates are really important accomplishment for the migrant workers. You will see here an interesting photo of those workers' representative, but there's a lot of people around them. One is the BWI inspectors. They are there. It's part of our inspection to look at the workers. But we also have FIFA, and you can see also the one representative from Coca-Cola, the one representative from the Transparency International, because we have a FIFA advisory board, and we conducted an inspection in Qatar. So this is important because it gives confidence to the migrant workers that what they are doing is right. So this really helped them with their work. So I won't go through this, but the joint inspection, BWI sends inspectors in Qatar, and we are inspecting all the stadium site on a regular basis. But our approach here is more constructive. We are able to bring all contractors together and companies, and provide them with some suggestion and corrective measure how to improve the working condition. And we do it on the spot. And part of that is looking at the working condition of the workers. So that's an important component is the joint inspection. The last important element in our work on organizing, engaging into social dialogue with the government. At the end of the day, you have to engage with the government. So let me give you an example here. This is a traditional May Day celebration in Qatar. Who's on the center? Not the workers. But now it has changed. Last year, the first May one ever that has been organized by the migrants themselves, it was last year. And then you can see here, this is one of the community leaders forum. This is the different community organization, workers representative that we have been working. And we invited the Ministry of Labor to have an open and answer question facilitated by BWI. They came. Normally, you cannot put them together. There's always a barrier between the Ministry of Labor and the workers. In this photo, it's really falling, the wall had fallen down in Qatar. You can see they are able to talk directly to the workers. And this community leaders forum now becomes a regular forum that they meet together and they talk to the ministry, open question. No, you do not manage the questions. And BWI is facilitating. So there's a shift now. The Qataris are beginning to realize the importance of migrants, the importance of listening to the migrants. April 28, International Workers Memorial Day. That's a big event for trade union around the world and for ILO. And Qatar conducts its annual Health and Safety Conference around April 28. So this is now an event every year since 2016 that they're holding this event promoting health and safety, employers, government, and trade unions. Migrant workers are invited. As you can see, you have the BWA logo. For the migrants, it's important. It's a recognition that they are part of this. And another one important aspect when it comes to engaging government is legal assistance. You can see the box there, health and safety suggestion box. You can see here Jinsuk, my colleague, with the ATM machine. Before, if you have a complaint, go to the ATM machine and put your complaint there. It didn't work. That's not the right way. So BWI actually started this legal clinic where we invite workers who are able to get advice and assist them in filing cases. Now we already have the labor dispute settlement mechanism. Workers can go directly to the ministry to file a case, but they don't go. They don't go. They don't have the confidence. That's why it's important that the community organization assist them in their cases.
Comrade Ambet, I'll just ask you to try to conclude. We are running out of time.
Now
Thank you.
I just wanted to say we have successes. You can see here, this is the workers who won important cases, and you have the check there. So just to conclude, so these are educating migrants, organizing communities, training of migrant leaders, organizing workers' committees, joint safety inspection, engaging the ministry and labor and social dialogue. These are important elements of organizing and empowering the migrants. Awareness of their rights, migrants helping migrants, electing their representatives. So these are really important components. Just to conclude, after few years of work in Qatar, I can conclude that migrant workers are beginning to believe that together as collective, they can improve their living and working condition. Migrants are not anymore afraid. They know where to go when they need help. That's why we believe that the BWI work should be continued, should be supported even after the World Cup. This is important because, there's a lot of, worry that, after the World Cup, they will forget the reform. We have to push this so that these reforms assisting migrants will continue even after the World Cup. Just one more thing. I have to just mention that I have to recognize the work of our colleague Chin Suk in Qatar, who passed away last year, but she was very instrumental in making our work a success in Qatar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Ambet. Very interesting experience. And also the post-arrival orientation seminar that turns out to be a membership one is very interesting, really. Well, we have lots of questions and we don't have much time, so we have to move fast now. So we selected some questions. Unfortunately, we won't be able to go through all of them, but I'll recommend for each panelist to around 5 minutes to maximum to answer the questions, because we have to finish in 24 minutes. So lots of questions for the three of you, actually, for Zoubeida, Herbert, Jillian, and also to Ambet. So some of the questions to Herbert, Jillian, please. Were the trade unions in both countries, Germany and Philippines, part of the negotiations for the bilateral labor agreements? Also, somebody asked if you could elaborate why the German-Philippines healthcare model is not adapted to other sectors in Germany or other countries where Filipina migrants go to. Also, Cecilia asked a question: how many men and women from Philippines work through this agreement in the health sector in Germany? And also the recognition of training, diploma. Anyway, unfortunately, we cannot take all questions. So Herbert and Jillian, until Zoubeida is back, could you try to answer some of the questions in 5 minutes, please?
Okay, I'll try. First question is, we were not involved in the bilateral agreement in the development because we were informed that it will happen on basis of this collective nationwide agreement I already said. So there was no need at that time to be involved. But after the bilateral agreement was implemented as the Triple Win project, we were from the beginning. So involved from the beginning, and which was Pearce-Link and Verdi. So the work has to be done at that point was more important. Up to now, it's 3,000 Filipino workers working in Germany. It seems not very much, but it's really a reduction of the workload for the German nurses. And other countries or other agreements, we have the same Triple Win project for Serbia, Bosnia, and Herzegovina, and Tunisia, concluded at the same time at 2013, but implemented in 2015. So The other sectors, well, it was the healthcare sector which demanded this to the government in Germany. So Germany asked the Philippines if they want to conclude a bilateral agreement.
Yeah. So Herbert already explained that in the development of the bilateral labor agreement, both Verdi and PS-Link were not involved. But as soon as we learned that the agreement was signed, as soon as we learned that the agreement was signed, we immediately reached out to our respective government agencies to be able to sit in the joint committee. There are other bilateral labor agreements actually that have similar good provisions, no? But they were never implemented. No? So I can say, for example, that the Philippines has also signed this good bilateral labor agreement on paper with Bahrain, but that never materialized. But then in the case of the bilateral labor agreement between the Philippines and Germany, because the trade unions became involved under this joint committee, we actually volunteered, forced ourselves into this joint committee, and it's also because of Verdi's pressure also to get the trade unions involved, and because of the actual involvement of the trade unions in this joint committee, this is also one of the reasons why this bilateral labor agreement has actually, it's really implemented. It's not just on paper. Other question. There's actually so many questions. Is there a provision on permanent residence? Yes. And does it really benefit? There's a question on whether it really benefits the country of origin. Yes, because we really need to come up with regular pathways, because our workers, they will migrate, and because out of desperation, as I said, because there are no job opportunities for them. So in the health sector, we have around 300,000 unemployed nurses. So the country of origin benefits. And there's also the benefit of remittances as well. No? So yeah, for now, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Herbert and Jillian. Very clear answers and clarifications. Now we will move on to Comrade Ambet. So Ambet, also lots of questions for all of you. I'll go, as we don't have much time, I'll share some questions here, and a lot of questions actually. So one question is regarding the number of migrant workers that died in Qatar building the World Cup. So one question is, should we call for a boycott on the event? How should we handle this situation? Or have there been any steps or plans made to organize migrant workers in Qatar, but also organize some form of restitution, of compensation to families when they have lost their loved ones in Qatar? Another question is regarding the impacts that the workers' committees had on the ground, especially in the light of companies not willing to respect the existing legislation. And also, how far the gains of the new spaces in Qatar is being used to advance organizing in other sectors for non-construction workers. So you have around 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Ambet.
Thank you. That's okay. Let's go straight to the controversy. I think you should read the article in detail, because it doesn't say that 6,000 workers died in the construction site. It doesn't say that 6,000 workers died in the construction of the stadium. Look at it's the headline is misleading, so it really doesn't represent the real situation. Maybe the right question that the article should focus, when the labor reform started, when BWS started inspection, when they implemented health and safety measures, have the incidence of accidents went up or went down? You cannot just compute from 2010 and, so you have to be more objective, because the truth of the matter, there are reforms. But did the reforms work? And did it improve the working condition or not? I would say yes. The working condition, the health and safety situation in Qatar has improved. I am myself an inspector. I was part of the BWI inspection team in Qatar, in the stadiums. It's not 6,000, there are only 70,000 workers there, and you say 6,000 died. It's a bit, I was there since 2017. We conducted inspection, and it has improved the working condition. And there are very few fatalities, very few. You can count with your fingers. The fact is there are only 3 since 2016. 4 fatalities in the stadium workers. To be more accurate, no? So I think we have to look deeper on what's going on, because I myself have been involved in the inspection. Health and safety has really improved. Now the question is, do we boycott or not? After telling you what have we been doing, after telling you migrants are winning their cases, getting their back wages, after migrants are improving their working condition, do we want to boycott? Is that the right question? Maybe the question is, what do we do with the workers? I think we should be all helping the workers improve their working condition. It's easier for us to say boycott. We are not there. Migrant workers will always be there and will be suffering. And this reform is important, and I think we should support that this reform become a reality, because there are reforms, implementation is slow, and we have to make it a reality. And that's true. We need Qatar still have to do more. And they have to do it even beyond the World Cup, because there are a feeling that maybe after the World Cup, they'll forget about it. This is the time to really, for the Qatari to show that they are serious. But boycott doesn't solve that. It doesn't solve that. We have to dialogue, we have to put pressure, and we let the migrant workers speak. Now, you were thinking of the workers' committees. Okay, what I'm telling you, the workers' committees only happen in the stadiums and with the Bansi project. And there is what you call a joint committee, which is mandatory. For me, I don't suggest that, because a joint committee is both management and workers, and you have to empower the workers. For me, before a worker can join a joint committee, there should be first a workers' committee, so that they are empowered and they are able to articulate the issue. The last point is, can we replicate this? Yes. We have been involved on the issue of sports and human rights. Sports now, there is now a nexus between sports and migration. If you talk about Russia, half of the Russian World Cup in 2018, half of the workers who build the stadium in Russia are migrants. Japan, who's building the stadium for the Olympics, who build it? 1/3 of those are migrant workers. And then you have Qatar. And then you probably would, if you go to North America, you know, World Cup in 2026, you have the...
On a les Latinos qui vont être impliqués. Alors,
muy claro entre eventos deportivos y la migración.
Penso que temos que usar esta experiência para nós próprios.
International mega sporting events, it is important that international global union should be present. And for us, we always recommend joint committees, a joint inspection, that BWI are able to inspect the construction site anywhere in the world. If you're talking about excellence in sports, it's international. You need to have excellence in terms of work standard. Thank you.
So I'll give now the floor again for the last remarks for Herbert and Jillian. Please, 2 or 3 minutes for the last remarks.
There were questions on whether we can actually replicate the bilateral labor agreement, and that is actually our advocacy with PS Link, PSI, Verdi. The idea is really because ever since we've been campaigning on bilateral labor agreements, we hardly see good practices, no? And so it was very difficult to advocate, to urge governments to come up with rights-based models, because there's really no existing good practice. But then now that we have this, we're now using this as the model to also improve the other bilateral labor agreements that the country enters into. So, but what is most difficult is really coming up with a similar structure that we advocated under the bilateral labor agreement, to come up with a joint committee that doesn't just involve the government agencies, but also involves trade unions from both countries of origin and destination. And this is something that we see is a really critical. If you want a bilateral labor agreement that is rights-based, that you really need to involve trade unions from both sides and other stakeholders as well.
Maybe I should tell you about the challenges we had, because it was not mentioned in the slides. There are no challenges regarding the bilateral agreement, but we have a few problems with small hospitals, employers in hospitals, excuse me, or in elderly care homes, because he wants to get the language course, the costs of the language course paid back, and some other services he provided for the migrant worker. But that's not successful if the migrant worker is a member of the union, because the union are providing, Verdi, it's only one union, is providing legal advice and the representation before the labor court. So all these cases have been managed, could be managed for the benefit of the worker in the past.
Thank you, Herbert. Thanks a lot. Really great exposition, great experience. I would like to give then the last minutes to Comrade Ambet, but I'll just highlight because there were so many questions from Eustace, Comrade Eustace James, regarding if they are separate unions or common unions, also from Rajesh, Sister Rajesh, Joel also. And one question that I would like to leave for you, the last one, is how can we take, that's Joel's question actually, how can we take the Qatar success to more difficult cases like the Saudi Arabia? Thank you.
Let's start with the Saudi Arabia. I think we need to campaign first. We need international pressure. Eventually, we will go there and engage, but not now. I think we need an international campaign for a real reforms in Saudi Arabia. The second one, you know, we have an opportunity with these reforms now. It's not perfect, but much worse if it is not implemented, you know. So we really need to focus the implementation. But the most important part in any implementation is not a top-down approach. It should be a bottoms-up approach. That's why organizing is really important. No? And I'm just, because I'm asked to present the BWI work, but I have to tell you, it's not only BWI who was involved in Qatar. You also have the global, Uni Global Union is present in Qatar. You have the ITF, International Transport Federation, is present in Qatar. You have the Domestic International Workers Union present in Qatar and the ITUC. So we are doing it according to our sector. And BWI is focused on number of construction workers in Qatar. Together, we coordinate, we cooperate together. In fact, we have what we call community liaisons officers that are recognized. And we are freely in terms of educating, organizing, mobilizing the migrant workers. But this is really crucial. No? Now, I think with the challenge now is for the Qatari to recognize this initiative, to recognize what the global unions are doing and support it, you know, to upscale it, to create more workers' committees, to educate more workers, no, to mobilize more workers, and let them organize into a community and labor formation. And that is really important to be recognized right now. You know, ILO has been very good in helping. You know, ILO has a project officer and they help the government with the technical capacity of a government. But who takes care of the migrant workers? Which is the global unions. So I think it is important that the global unions should be fully recognized by the government and allowed to do the work, like what I explained to you, these 6 elements of the work we do in Qatar. Allow it, let it bloom. And I think in the future, you will see a real union in Qatar coming together stronger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambet. Thank you. I mean, all the speakers, excellent contribution, cases, initiative. It makes our hearts still warm, though we are facing such a difficult time globally and some countries even worse. Anyway, I want to thank for myself, I mean, for inviting Lou, for inviting Kut to share this session. Also reshaping work for the excellent organization, the interpreters, of course, without them, it wouldn't be possible. And of course, all the participants with so many comments and questions. It's really great. Thank you.